Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss X-Men Apocalypse, starring James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, Oscar Isaac, Nicholas Hoult, Rose Byrne, Ty Sheridan, Sophie Turner, Olivia Munn, and Lucas Till, and directed by Bryan Singer. So, I remember seeing this in theaters, and what did I think of it then? To be honest, I thought it was better than Days of Future Past, but is it the same now? Let's get into it. In Egypt in 3600 BCE, Apocalypse, played by Oscar Isaac from the new Star Wars trilogy, is giving himself a new body to transfer into. This honestly feels ugly. Hey, this whole movie is ugly in general. Some revolutionists puts a big boulder on Apocalypse, and this storytelling feels muddled and generally as well. We pick up in 1983, and Scott Summers discovers his new powers as a bully keeps knocking on his bathroom door until Scott knocks his ass down, and that felt dreadful. Meanwhile, in East Berlin, Mystique, returned by Jennifer Lawrence, lets Kurt Wagner, aka Nightcrawler, played by Cody Smith-McPhee, an angel out of a cage fight felt pretentious. Meanwhile, Eric Lenscher, aka Magneto, aka for now Henrik, played by returned by Michael Fassbender, what am I saying, is a family man with a wife and a daughter that slowed the movie down. And this is a long movie at 2.5 hours, and I felt the length and some of this could have been in the editing room. Alex Summers returns and brings his younger brother Scott to Professor Xavier's school for the gifted youngsters and bumps into Jean Grey, played by Sophie Turner from a show that just finished called... And I kind of like her here. Kind of. Top Curiosity in X-Men Dark Phoenix, but here she faces a rough power and she felt pain, and I like that so far. We'll see when we get to the Dark Phoenix, but so far she's adequate at best. In Cairo, Egypt, Moira McTaggart, played by Rose Byrne, is snooping her nose around where she shouldn't, and she's now a worthless character and does nothing except she says that she's from the CIA and Xavier crushes on her. Just what a lame way to go. Henrik shows his magnetic power to the world, and Jean has a bad dream about the end of the world, and I'm not following any of this so far. Meanwhile, Charles, returned by James McAvoy, sees Moira in Cairo and looks to go to the CIA headquarters, which is rather too ludicrous to go there. Henrik's wife and daughter get killed after the Russian police takes Magneto in, while the daughter cries and uses her mutant powers, and she gets killed along with the wife. And the acting in that scene was god awful. And I thought the X-Men movies are better than that, including the god awful Wolverine Origins movie. Apocalypse walks around Cairo and witnesses Aurora Monroe, aka Storm, played by Alexandra Shipp, stealing from a market, and encounters Apocalypse and kills the market men. And he's not convincing me as a powerful mutant, as some people were telling me. And he recruits Storm, and she's a terrible villain with another character I don't like. Apocalypse Storm recruit Psylocke, played by Olivia Munn, and that's the character I just do not like. She's a terrible character, and she's terrible in this movie. And they recruit Angel, and they recruit Magneto out of all the people. And I do like that scene when Magneto says, "Who the fuck are you?" That did get a kick out of me by laughing. It was pretty funny in an unnecessary kind of way. Meanwhile, Scott invites Kurt, Jean, and some unknown mutant. And Kurt... Oh, yeah, that's right, I already said Kurt. And I like the scene when they come out of a movie theater to see Return to the Jedi. And I like when they say Empire Strikes Back was better, which isn't quite true for me. The original trilogy... Watch the original trilogy reviews. I like the original Star Wars better. And I'd rather watch that movie than this movie as I'm getting older. I'm a fan of Jennifer Lawrence, But she's like, she like X-Men Days of Future Past. She was foaming it for me. She's foaming it in like she's not believable as she's Natalie Portmaning this like what Portman did in the Star Wars prequels. Because she's absolutely stale here. And I don't like the character she's playing here anymore. And my prediction for the Dark Phoenix is she's going to die based on the trailer I saw for it rather too early. But let's see how that goes. Charles talks with Eric on Cerebro, and Apocalypse goes inside Charles's head and launches the missiles, in which everyone looks at the missiles. We get a Stan Lee cameo as he's staring at them, and Alex destroys Cerebro and the mansion when Apocalypse shows up and grabs Charles, and Peter, aka Quicksilver, returned by Evan Peters, saves every living soul plus a dog, and Scott, Jean, Kurt, and a new mutant come back and suddenly realize the mansion is Alec, and Alex is killed. And that's when William Stryker comes in and takes Moira, Peter, Hank, and Mystique with them. And Scott, Jean, and Kurt come with them, and I don't like Stryker back in this movie, but we'll get a Wolverine cameo later on. Apocalypse makes Charles give a message to the world, and we find the audience get told by Peter that late Magneto is his father, which didn't we want to hear that in Days of Future Past, honestly. And Scott, Jean, and Kurt let Wolverine out of his cage and attack Stryker's men, and Jean frees Wolverine into the snow. And I did like the ambush of Wolverine, but all of this felt very muddled to the point. I don't know what in the hell is going on, but eventually Moira, Peter, Hank, and Mystique are let out by Scott, Jean, and Kurt, and I don't care. The X-Men go to war with Apocalypse, while Apocalypse puts Charles on a transfer body table with him. Kurt, Scott, Jean, and with Hank and Peter and Mystique go to Magneto to talk him out of the madness. Kurt goes into the pyramid, and Hank, Jean, and Scott get encountered by Storm, and Psylocke comes to the rescue after Hank throws a car at a Storm. And Beast versus Psylocke fight isn't very fair until he throws her to the roof. Kurt versus Angel it's obvious Kurt's gonna win at this point and bring the X-Men, including Charles, back into the ship. And Psylocke breaks down the ship, and Angel dies in the crash. And Peter and Mystique go back to fight with the X-Men. And Magneto realizes there's still good in him and betrays Apocalypse while he's calling out on Charles, and Peter punches him. And Mystique, disguised as Psylocke, slices Apocalypse's neck. And Storm also betrays Apocalypse, and Charles fights him until he becomes giant and beats his ass, Apocalypse, I mean. Until Jean comes in as the Dark Phoenix, and that I can find believable because of the movie coming up in a few weeks. And they defeat Apocalypse, rebuild the school, and Mystique trains the new X-Men. And I wasn't satisfied when credits rolled. It was all muddled, and after the credits, who in the hell is Essex? Essex. E-S-S-E-X. Because there's an Essex Corp. Let's hope they tell us in Dark Phoenix, because they never told us in the next two movies, I'll say. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.7 out of 10. This is the weakest and most muddled X-Men movie yet to date, not counting that god-awful Wolverine Origins. The acting is bad, the story is muddled, and I'm very nervous for X-Men Dark Phoenix, but at the same time, I'm hopeful it's better, but I'm still a little nervous about that one, particularly after this movie. So I will be back next week with Logan, the story about Old Man Logan, and I will talk about that next week. And until next time, let's get started on the new X-Men franchise.